Hello, everyone. This is Tom from VoIP Supply, and I'm joined today by Tommy Lee from Fanville. We'll be going through the new Fanville XU series IP phones, as well as their PA2 broadcast solutions. And with that, we're going to go to the next slide here. So during the webinar, if you do have any questions, we do have a Q&A feature right down in the lower right-hand corner. There's a little blurb bubble with the letter Q in it. You click on that, you can post your question in there, and we will address and answer all questions at the end of the webinar. As I said, my name is Tom from VoIP Supply. You may or may not know a lot of the benefits you get from being a registered reseller with VoIP Supply. Listed here are some of the programs that we do offer to our reseller partners, including our VoIP rental program, hardware and provisioning, our CloudSpan marketplace, which basically can give you the ability to become an agent for any of the service providers that we are affiliated with and have direct relationships with, as we are a master agent, which helps you collect residuals month over month based on the MRR that you accrue. And then we also have our fulfillment program, which basically goes hand in hand with hardware and provisioning. So we have our fulfillment portal with its own API where it makes it easier for you to manage orders, which directly can be affiliated with hardware provisioning. So we can drop and blind ship hardware to your customers, have it ready to go, pre-configured and everything ready to go for them, not having to worry about any kind of configuration. We also have our Refresh Reclaim program where you can either save money on some refreshed gear, or you can earn some money back selling your old gear. We can work that in a lot of different ways for you, and have great contacts here in our Refresh Reclaim team. So if you do have gear you want to sell back, you can let us know anytime, and I can get you a quotation on that, or get you a quotation on some A-stock refurbished product. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Tommy Lee from Fanville, and he's going to go through the finer points of Fanville's offerings.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Tom. As Tom mentioned earlier, sorry for the confusion that two Toms on here, but given the services offered by VoIP Supply, one of the key items in being able to deploy our solutions out there very carefully is time. So that with their provisioning services, as well as their ability to take in some of the old products and turn it around, it really adds a lot of differentiation in terms of being able to work with our partners and being able to do that transition for your end client as seamless as possible. Looking at this first slide, this is just sort of my start-off slide for the people who are not familiar with Fanville. We are a large manufacturer of phones. In fact, one of the big items of our business is doing OEM and rebranding. In fact, it's a big part of our business in which I'm pretty sure many of you have probably worked across one of our rebrand phones one time or another. But as I go through the slide, the top is really what we call our commercial IP phones. It can really be divided into three separate categories. One is the actual looking at the phones themselves, which is the commercial line, which I'll go over in detail. Second to the right is the hospitality phones. Not only do we develop phones for the commercial business, but we also have a really focused in phone set that is also targeted for the hospitality business. One of the things that you'll find with Fanville is that we are a SIP endpoint manufacturer. We don't really go out of our way to provide a whole solution in terms of providing a PBX platform. But what we do is that we actually provide SIP endpoints, whether it's phones, hospitality phones, as well as the intercom section, as well as door access units on the lower right-hand corner that are all SIP compatible. We spend a lot of our resources making sure that all of these devices are well interoperable with many of the leading PBX providers out there. As a big differentiator, we also have all the redirection and the services that many people who are in the business that are used to, as well as a management system that couples all three of these different segments into one management interface. Because, for those who really deploy a lot of phones, you want to be able to take all those things and be able to consolidate it and just with one interface connect and deploy all of these items in series. And if you need help, it's one of these things that VoIP Supply can also provide help with provisioning as well. All right, next slide. So in it, let's just start off by looking at the XU series. And one of the real differentiators about our XU series is that we've decided to really consolidate. When I came on board from Fanduel about a year ago, we realized that there was really so much models and differences that really, quite frankly, in my opinion, didn't mean a whole lot. So we decided to consolidate everything into what we call the XU series. And what we've really done in this series is being able to consolidate GigE, PoE, color screen, BLF keys, all featured in the one series so that you don't have to pick and choose what models you want to go ahead and focus on depending on what your client end needs are. This really provides a really simple solution for our installers, but at the same time, it also lowers risk for a lot of our resellers as well as distribution, and being able to minimize the amount of SKUs that you really have to deal with, starting with the X3U on the baseline that doesn't have anything. And as it moves up with the 4U, 5U, and 6U, the feature sets as well as the screen size goes up. And one of the real differentiators is that if you notice, even say with the X6U and the 5U moving down, we were able to divide the BLF screen from the actual SIP account screens. And that's a huge advantage. And that's really why many of the resellers focus on our phones, is because when you put in multiple SIP accounts on the left-hand side, you can actually tactically manage all of your accounts on one window without sacrificing any of the BLF keys that you see in the lower right-hand corner. Now, keep in mind, what you see in the lower right-hand corner is just one window. There are actually multiple windows there that you can see, perhaps up to 30 or perhaps even up to 60 DSS keys on the window, and you can have three or four SIP lines and not disturb any of those windows whatsoever. So it's a great differentiator. And when you look at the X5U and the 6U, we begin adding little things like adding Bluetooth included in the X5U so that you don't have to go out and procure a separate dongle to be able to interface with your people's, headsets or smartphones. And that's the same moving up. So as you move up in the model, the more and more integration it gets. With the X6U, you can say, you know what? Those 6 keys in the lower right-hand corner is just really too small to handle my things. If you want double the size, as well as adding some video, you can move the X6U, which doubles the windows and be able to give you multiple windows so that your client will be able to go ahead and satisfy their specific needs. The great news about all of these is that they include Opus codec, PoE, it makes it very, very simple from your base operation to the 3 all the way to the top on the X6U. And they're also value priced as well. Next slide, please. So as again, many of you out there are going to realize there's a lot of people that are selling phones out there, and I just want to focus in on the differentiating piece. So if you look at the top 3 bullet points, not only do they all include the basic features on one thing, so you don't have to decide which model is which, because these models include all of what we consider the baseline features. Another basic feature is that we also provide a 2-year warranty, and that starts from the time that VoIP Supply provides the phones to you. So once you get the phone, what will happen is that that's when the clock ticks from distributor to the actual reseller or installer, and then you can go ahead and have a longer honorable warranty that will go along with the product line. And in addition to that, we also have rebranding opportunities. As I mentioned earlier, when I came on board, many of the people out there may have touched, one of our partners out there on a rebranded phone, but we could also rebrand phones for you as well. You could actually look at the X3U and the 5U, which we actually bring down to like a minimum order quantity of 200 units. And in that piece, you can go ahead and actually have your brand name marked on these phones so that, if you don't want to pump out the Fanduel brand, what you can do is work with us and you can actually market your own brand as you go out into the field, assuming that you can meet the minimum order quantities. Now, in addition to that, the rebranding, but we've also made some upgrades into the hardware. One of the things that we've done in the second tier to the left is HD voice. A lot of people put out, we support G722. That's a great codec. But in addition to that, we also added Harman speakers, which allows for great speaker performance. And what we've done there is that is that we've allowed that speaker to work in numerous applications, which gives you, the end customer, a lot of different options that you can do. Opus, obviously, if you're a PBX platform, support Opus. You can handle everything from low bandwidth opportunities to high bandwidth. And the idea is to skip that voice modulation that you hear when you have businesses that have low bandwidth that can't necessarily meet their thing. So these are the things. If you have any further questions, feel free to give me a call. Next slide. Let's just talk a little bit about the brand marketing for your own logos. As you note on the center screen, we actually support a screen where you can actually have that portion where the logo would normally go to. That's where your logo would fit in on the top of the XU series phones. Now the X4 and 6 also can be rebrandable, but the minimum order quantity for those are much higher. Now, as I mentioned here, it says on the top is that typically it takes about, even the upbringing, the boot up screen, normally would say Fanvil on a Fanvil brand. It will even come up and say something generic like VoIP, and as well as the internal screens. Not that your clients will be seeing it, but in essence, if you decide to send your phones out there, it'll be basically your brand will be the only brand that's advertised, not only internal to the phone, but external to the containers as well. Next slide. As I mentioned earlier before, we upgraded the speaker phone to a Harman speaker, which really provides great speaker performance. And what I want to do here is that for people who are lucky enough to pair a smartphone into their car, this phone works in the exact same way. So that because it's, say, the X5 and the X6 includes an integrated Bluetooth, you can actually pair your smartphone to couple with it. But not only can it receive calls and you can pick it up on the Bluetooth, but you can also dial in. So you can actually designate one of the side SIP keys on the upper end of the phone as your Bluetooth. So if you wanted to dial out a call, you can just go ahead, pick your phone, and dial out using a much larger keypad, and being able to have that call, with the exception of the tinny voice that you would get on a smartphone, on a much larger speaker. So that's how I typically operate a lot on my speakerphone capability. So not only can it make calls, but it could also receive calls, very mimicking the same way that you would operate with your car when you can pair your smartphone with your vehicle. Next slide, please. In addition to the XU, we also have what we call the Executive IP phone series. These series of phones really focus in on those who really want to have a much larger screen. And we call this our X7 series. And the X7 series comes on the left side as a touchscreen phone, or in the middle as an X7C. Both of those phones really are the same phone, except we've realized over the years that having a touchscreen is a very subjective thing. People either love it or hate it. So the good news is that we've actually made two models for those who want to use buttons. You could use the X7C, which reduces the size of the screen a little bit to accommodate physical buttons. But if you like a touchscreen phone, you could just go with the 7XC. And very new on the right-hand side is the X7A. What that is an Android phone. And the Android phone has just been released, and I believe we may have inventory over at VoIP Supply, which also can get coupled with an optional camera. What this is with an Android phone is that you can actually download Zoom, Skype, or whatever IM application that's available in an Android application to this phone, so that you can actually see many of these things happening at the same time. Very often, I just saw for the first time yesterday, someone was using a screen share, and I could actually see the entire screen share across the whole back screen of the phone, which is pretty handy. It's a really great alternative to a PC if this is something that you leave on your desk all the time. So it's a great alternative for those who want to seek an Android phone. Next slide. So looking at the X7, this also contains the upgraded hardware as well. This is a standard feature which contains 20 SIP lines and all the different things of the integrated features that we have with the previous phones as well, but except this is just a large touchscreen. The great advantage of this is that it also has a video decoder, which allows you to sort of decode video, because as you note with the intercom, some of them actually have video cameras, not only from those cameras, but any third-party IP camera. You could also show the VGA quality on these phones very, very well in case you wanted to monitor it. Next slide, please. Now, looking at the Android phone, this is not our first step into the Android. So the X7A series will take the place of the existing C600. So once the C600 sell out of our inventory, that'll be the last time you see them, and it'll all migrate into the X7A series. One really important thing is that this is the latest phone that supports Android version 9. And because it supports version 9, many of the apps out there that you find in the marketplace require Android version 8 and above, so that if you don't have 8 and above, then you're not necessarily running on your latest features. And as well, we sell an auxiliary camera, so that if you want this to be an interactive video screen like you would do on your PC for things like Zoom or Skype or what have you, you can actually hook up a camera to this phone and be able to use it. Another unique thing about this camera is that it comes with 2 cables. One cable is a short cable that hooks up into the phone if you want to use it as a standalone device. It also comes with a much longer cable, about 2 feet long, that will enable you to take that camera and hook it onto a monitor so that you can see the front of your face rather than having off on the side, looking at your lower left or right-hand chin. So that's an option that you can have that goes along with this phone. Next slide, please. Some of the keys that you would find on the Android phone is that if you click on one button, you could actually see a whole screen full of SIP calls as well as the BLF keys that you see, and that's just a screenshot giving you an idea of not only the quick keys that are provided to the right, but also a lot of the BLF keys, and it gives you up to 112 programmable DSS keys right at your fingertips. Next slide, please. And some of the unique, what we call the specialty IP phones, the Fanvil X2P has been designed specifically for the contact center or call centers. Really, really low profile, low real estate, and it also can come with an optional foot pedal. And that little antenna that you see is really a stand to host headset so that you can put on your headset and be able to page through whatever you can. One of the big things that Fanvil is famous for is posting a lot of buttons. And what we've done is included on one single motherboard, the X210, which really compiles 2 sidecars on one motherboard on one platform, giving you really, in essence, 6 sidecars on the one platform, because each of those things has 3 different windows. And that's more than enough button capability that gives your end user more than enough interactive capability of being able to monitor who's online and who's offline on a quick flash. And the reason that it's all on one motherboard, it also saves you lots of time, because the cost of this device is far less than buying a high-end telephone coupled with a sidecar. So this gives you far more functionality and performance for the same price. And obviously we have the Fanvil PA2. This is what we call our public announcement system, so that if you have a PA system or the need to put in multitasking, you can go ahead and actually casting, is that you can actually put this device and it could support, an existing PA system, so that if you upgrade the phones to SIP, you could also adapt their existing working PA system to work with that SIP PBX as well. I can dig into details on the PA2 for hours, but this is just meant as an overview for a lot of the solutions that both VoIP Supply and Fanvil provide to the marketplace. Next slide, please. Just getting into the X2, we talked a little bit about this, and it supports all the main features, but on a very low platform. Next slide, please. And that's the foot pedal that we see that I mentioned about earlier, and what you can attach to it. On the next slide. On the X210, again, it has all of the basic features. In addition to that, it also supports VGA decoding as well, so you can actually see where a lot of these phones monitor in the front. What I've actually seen these things use a lot is in a lot of multi-dwelling units, where you can actually see the person that's actually coming in through the door, and you can actually page through many of the different apartments or offices that they see, and you can just monitor and interact accordingly with 3 separate windows. So it's a really great phone that Fanvil is really recognized and providing to the marketplace. Next phone. Here's just a quick lower level description of the PA2. It also could be hooked in directly to a passive speaker. So if you have a front gate application, it actually has up to a 30-watt amplifier internal that if you power it up correctly, it'll provide that. It could also power up amplifiers that already exist in the marketplace, so that if you're implementing in a hotel or any office buildings that has an existing PA system, you can actually use this to interface onto an existing amp. Or on the left to right-hand side, it actually has logic, which means that you can use this to power up and down a mag door lock if you want to, or use an alarm light in case you want to have a loud speaker alarm in a loud warehouse where you can have a visual as well. It does a lot of basic SIP. It provides a lot of SIP interfaces to many things that weren't meant to be SIP. And because of that, if you look in the center up, there is an actual optional PA2 kit that we provide an additional button, a camera, as well as an additional speaker that gives you the capability of providing that I/O capability of retrofitting something that doesn't comply with SIP, but you need to interface it with the PBX, and that's what this option does. And it's a really popular unit for Fanville. Next slide. This is just a real last slide for the PA2. This is sort of a multicast address where you can actually put this in a branch unit and be able to provide it and dial up an extension. And you could then use this device as a multicast address, providing streamable audio or whatever device you want to into an existing PA, to a speaker, or any IP phone that has broadcasting or multicasting listening capability. So if you don't have that, this is a great gateway to provide that capability as well. Next slide. This is it. This is my last slide. This is my contact information. If you want to go ahead and have a copy of my contact, feel free to reach out to VoIP Supply. They have me, or you can call me directly, TommyLee@fanville.com. I'll switch the floor back over to Tom or you lady and be able to address any questions that you might have. Again, thank you for your time. I'll just sit back and listen to questions moving forward.
Very good. Thank you very much, Tommy. I appreciate your time and expertise on all of the things that you spoke about today. Did have a few questions came in here, so I just wanted to start the first one on the models of phone with Bluetooth. Can you pair any Bluetooth headset with them?
Yes, in fact, if they comply with the latest Bluetooth, I mean, it does conform with the latest, I forgot what revision it is on Bluetooth, but yeah, you can go ahead and pair up a Bluetooth headset with it. In fact, that's probably one of the largest applications for the Bluetooth is pairing up the headset. So, we don't have a compatibility model that says we've tested, because there are new models that are coming into the marketplace much faster than we can actually do cross-pollinate. But many of the popular ones that are provided by Jabra, Plantronics, and Sennheiser, they all in essence pair up very well, and you should be able to take care of calls here or remotely. And for those that actually work on a hard removable handset, we also have an EHS adapter, which allows you to hook up a lot of these phones to third-party, off-hook type of headsets that aren't Bluetooth as well. So we got it covered on both cases.
Great. Also, another question here was with the X7A and web camera, are you able to communicate with other video conferencing platforms such as Zoom or BlueJeans?
I have used my camera. I use the X7A in using Zoom, so that other people can, they don't even know that you're on an Android phone. In fact, you can go to Android, and I believe you could just download what they call as an APK file. It's the Android module onto the phone, and then what you can do is you'll actually see a Zoom icon and be able to push on it, and next thing you know, it'll ask you for your username and password. And oh, by the way, that X7A actually has Wi-Fi built into the phone as well. So once you show up in a location, not only can you hook it in with with Ethernet, you could also pair up wirelessly to your Wi-Fi adapter, download your Bluetooth, and nobody will know that you're actually speaking from a phone. So yeah, the answer is yes. Should they decide to share their screen, you can actually see the screen share on the phone itself if you want to, but it behaves just like a client would on Zoom. I didn't do it interactive with BlueJeans yet. I mean, there are more applications out there that I can do testing, but for Zoom, I did do that, and it works great.
Great. So we got a few other questions here that came in. Well, George, George said something about a compatibility issue here with the Yaystar PBX in a cloud-based system, that it's hard to get support on it. Are
Yep.
you having trouble with Fanvil phones to it, George? I guess would be my question. I just trying to figure how Tommy and I can help you here, because we're kind of
Yeah.
talking Fanvil.
Yeah.
Yaystar
is actually a certified partner for Fanvil. You know,
Mhm.
they're
Okay.
there. I mean, they're listed as one of our compatible partners. So, but
Yeah.
whether or not if they're hosted or local, it's something that should not pose any problems when working with the A-Star. So.
Okay. Yeah, and so he's having compatibility issues with that. What I would say, George, if you want to reach out to me directly on that, we can address that outside of the webinar. It's probably going to be a longer conversation, and I'll probably have to just try to get you directed to some sort of support. So I also have another question here. Did you say that you can stream video? I'm assuming he meant stream and not streak video to the phone from any IP camera. So, Ron, are you asking about the Android phone and streaming surveillance camera footage to it? Because the answer to that, I believe, would be yes.
As long
Correct,
as
Tommy?
as long as the camera itself is an IP camera, not necessarily an analog camera. Right. One of the things on my to-do list is I actually have a Ring system at home, and I've still have yet to put in the IP address of that camera to see if it would work. But what you would end up doing is going to one of the DSS keys, and as opposed to assigning it with an action URL or a speed dial, there's one that says video input, and then you're supposed to put in the IP address of the phone. And if it speaks in the right dialect, it should be able to display on that phone when you push that DSS key saying, okay, I want to see the front of my house or in the back of the house. We'll have different cameras, and you should be able to see.
Now, Tommy, on the X7 that has Android or any of your Android phones, what version of Android are they running?
The X7A runs version 9.0 and
okay.
above. Yeah.
So if it's running that high of a version, from what I know, and I maybe something to add in a later webinar, from that version and up, you're able to go into the Play Store and you could download the app for anything like a VivoTech, Mobotics, Axis, and you could directly use the app on the desk phone to actually view the video as well, make it a little simpler.
Correct. I mean, people use the word Play Store a little differently. A lot of times when you go into a Google Play Store, a lot of those stores are really designed for your phone application. So in general, you have to really download what we call an APK module, which is really the Android module. And they're just as available, but a lot of people use, I'm in the Google Store, how do I download? Because I tried doing that myself when I first came across this Android phone, and it says, all right, what phone do you want to pair your store with? Because everybody's used to working Android that way, but this is a little different, that you just download a module and then the logon capability is exactly the same.
Okay. Yeah, I've done it with other manufactured Android phones, so that I'm basically making an outside assumption that you'd be able to do something similar.
Yes, correct.
I got another question here in regards to the EHS-20. Is it designed specifically for job? Phil, no, it's not actually. The EHS-20 is just the electronic hook switch adapter for the Fanvil phones. You'd be able to use a Plantronics as well as a Jabra or Sennheiser with that EHS adapter. And Ron asks you, Tommy, how many units are required for private label?
For the X3U and X5U, the minimum order quantity is 200.
Beautiful.
That's per model.
And are there any other questions out there? I'm not seeing anything else coming in at the moment. All right. Well, again, I thank everybody for attending today, taking time out of your busy days. I know everybody has a lot going on these days with everything going on with the pandemic and everything else. So appreciate your time, and of course appreciate Tommy jumping on here, sharing his expertise, and Of course, we highly value Fanville's partnership and look forward to doing many more of these.
Great. Thank you very much for your time. I'm based in the States as well, so feel free to give Tom and Tom a call.
we're T squared, is it we like
Exactly.
to say. All right, everybody. Thank you. Take care and be safe.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Bye-bye.